And now to the story of a transgender sailor whose case the Supreme Court ruled on today. As Nick Schifrin reports, she says she is fighting not only for her job in the Navy, but for future transgender service members.
What does the water mean to you?
It's freedom.
For as long as Petty Officer Megan Winters can remember, she's felt compelled to serve on the water and in the military.
I joined the military to serve my country. My father was in the service. He joined the Army right out of high school, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps.
Those footsteps took her onto the George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier. She works in information technology.
Roughly 5,000 people coming together, putting bombs on aircraft to getting IP services to a ship. It's just a lot of cogs and a lot of people doing really great work.
Have you ever thought of your contribution to the military as different from any other sailor?
Not one bit.
And why not?
Because I am that small cog. I do what I'm supposed to do when I'm supposed to do it, and I do it well. Do it damn well.
In her 2017 evaluation report, her commander wrote, quote, "She embodies the qualities the Navy seeks in its future leaders," and strongly recommended her for promotion. Last year, her commander wrote she ranked in the top 1% of her peers, and in the category of military bearing and appearance, she greatly exceeds standards. For Winters, that appearance has been hard-fought. She was born male.
It was never me. I never saw myself looking in the mirror for so long and not seeing oneself. In a way, your own body like completely betraying you.
What did you see when you looked in the mirror?
Not me. It was scary for so long, so many years of just not being able to relate to the person that was looking back at me.
Through her mid-20s, she was self-destructive. She would drive fast and not care if she crashed or even died. And then this moment, her first hormone therapy pill paid for by the military. It allowed her to transition. Over 1 year, Megan Winters became Megan Winters. A new uniform, a new blouse, a new dress.
And when you look in the mirror today?
I can't put it into words. It's me. I'm starting to live my life authentically. And it's the best feeling in my entire life.
On Thursday, Defense Secretary Ash Carter...
Winters' transition became possible in 2016 when Secretary of Defense Ash Carter lifted a ban on transgender service members.
Effective immediately, transgender Americans may serve openly, and they can no longer be discharged or otherwise separated from the military just for being transgender.
Now being allowed to be me in the military, it rejuvenated my spirit in not only myself, but my job, my whole being was just elated.
She says her fellow service members asked a lot of questions. Some were rude, most were curious and respectful. It all changed with a tweet. In July 2017, President Trump wrote, "The United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military." 7 months later, Secretary of Defense James Mattis released formal guidance. No future transgender service members, but active duty transgender service members would be allowed to stay, as would service members who might consider themselves transgender but remain in their biological sex. The report said transgender service members could, quote, "undermine readiness, disrupt unit cohesion, and impose an unreasonable burden on the military."
Much higher medical costs, much higher utilization of the mental health system, and so forth. So in that sense, there is a problem. They are probably not, on average, going to be as available for deployment as other service members are.
Peter Sprigg is a senior fellow at the Family Research Council, which supports the transgender ban.
These are essentially elective and cosmetic procedures. Rather than, I don't accept the claim that this is something medically necessary. The purpose of our military is to fight and win America's wars. It's not to provide specialized medical care at taxpayer expense.
To treat transgender people, as Megan has already explained, differently when they can shoot just as well as their peers, they can meet every physical standard as their peers, they pass every mental test that's required of them. That's a form of discrimination, and that violates the Constitution.
Sasha Buchert is Winters' lawyer and an attorney with Lambda Legal that sued the government to reverse the transgender ban. Multiple circuit court cases argue transgender service members don't reduce readiness. Army Chief of Staff and incoming chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, told a congressional hearing last year he agreed.
Have you since heard anything how transgender service members are harming unit cohesion?
No, I have received precisely 0 reports of issues of cohesion, discipline, morale, and all those sorts of things. No.
As did Chief of Naval Operations Admiral John Richardson.
I'm not aware of any issues.
But Marine Commandant General Robert Neller acknowledged concern about medical care.
The only issues I've heard of is, in some cases, because of the medical requirements of some of these individuals, that there is a burden on the commands to handle all their medical stuff. But discipline, cohesion in the force, no.
They've had well over a year since this litigation began, a year and a half, to bring forward evidence showing that there's been some effect on military readiness, and they have failed. They have provided no evidence.
Winters felt compelled to serve, compelled to transition, and if compelled to leave,
Do what I'm supposed to do when I'm supposed to do it, whatever I'm asked. If it's a lawful order, you follow it. So in that sense, if my commander-in-chief had asked me to leave the military, I would have had to.
Throughout this process, she also struggled to explain herself to her father, the veteran. One of her brothers cut off all contact.
My parents and my 2 older brothers didn't quite understand. Not only was I going to transition, but my family was going to transition with me.
She was willing to walk away from her family, but asked for a final favor, the name she would have been had she been born a woman, Megan.
I feel like my parents had to mourn the loss. But then to understand that they didn't actually lose anybody. They gained somebody.
That is what she hopes, despite today's Supreme Court action, the lower courts decide as well, to give future transgender service members the freedom of the water, the freedom to serve. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin in Norfolk.